I reviewed over 200 developer resumes, and to be honest with you, the results shocked me. So much so that I'm making this video to break down all of the mistakes that I saw so that you guys won't make the same ones. Now, you might have remembered that about a year and a half ago, I was running a tech startup. And during that time, I interviewed a ton of different people, read all kinds of resumes, portfolios, and applications. And then later on, I went to actually run a school community where I did one-on-one calls with a bunch of people reviewing and roasting their resumes. Now, it's safe to say that I've seen a ton of different resumes, specifically for more junior or entry-level candidates. And I think it gives me some good insight here to make this video and really give you the best tips and advice I can so that you're not putting yourself at a disadvantage. In today's job market, we know that it's more difficult than ever to land a developer job. And if you have even just the tiniest mistake in your resume, that can be a reason that you don't get a job or you don't get an interview. Now, with that said, let's get into the major mistakes that I saw because, to be honest, they were very common and they just kept popping up over and over again. Now, the first major mistake that I noticed was a lack of proper English. Now, look, I understand that a lot of you guys watching this video don't speak English as your first language. A lot of you are from other countries, and I appreciate that English is a very difficult language, even for English native speakers like myself. But when you're doing something like written content, like an application or resume, you need to do the best you possibly can to have perfect English. I hate that the world is this way, but unfortunately, if you don't speak a language fluently, people see you as less intelligent. Even though a lot of people aren't going to admit that to you, when you're reading kind of weird broken English or something that's weirdly structured or uses weird words or there's grammar mistakes or spelling mistakes, you just assume that the person writing that is stupid. Now, almost every single time, that's actually not the case. They might even be smarter than you. The issue is that they just don't have mastery of that particular language, and they can't articulate and express themselves well enough so that you can see how intelligent they actually are. So especially when it comes to something like a resume, you need to do the best you possibly can to present yourself almost like a native English speaker, where you have perfect English, everything looks good, there's no weird words or weird structured sentences, grammar is correct, etc. Now, a great way to do that is to give your resume to a ton of other people to review that speak English better than you do. I even do this myself with my resumes. My aunt, for example, is an English teacher. I'll give her pretty much any written material that I want to make sure is perfect, and I'll have her review it and make sure my grammar is proper, I'm using the correct words, I'm not repeating myself too much. Even for English native speakers, you need to do this. So especially if you're someone who doesn't yet have mastery of the English language, please consult with people that do, give your resume to a ton of different people, and be open to as much criticism as possible, and just make sure that it's absolutely perfect. This also goes for if you're writing something like a cover letter or you're writing an application. Use AI tools, use ChatGPT, get it to fix your grammar and tweak your responses. Obviously, use your own words, but just make sure that whatever you're submitting is absolutely perfect, because it's one reason that people might look beyond you is that you might not seem intelligent enough based on the way that you're writing or structuring something like a resume. Now, the next major mistake that I see is formatting and content selection. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't actually know how to make a resume. They have an idea, they maybe saw some template online, but they're not tailoring their resume for particular positions or what it is that they actually want to get, and they aren't really selecting the right things to put on their resume. There's a lot of times where I'll go into a meeting with someone, I'll talk to them for 10 minutes, and a lot of the stuff they're telling me just isn't on their resume, or they have all these weird, irrelevant things that don't really help tell their story and demonstrate them as a candidate. Now, this is more on a one-by-one basis, and I'll give you some examples in a second, but if you do really want some extra guidance with resumes, trying to land software developer jobs, I do have a program with Course Careers. If you guys are interested, you can check it out, and through that program, obviously, we teach you everything you need to know about software development, but the main value add is once you finish the program, we actually walk you through step-by-step everything you need to do to land a developer job. Now, that includes building your portfolio, setting up your resume, getting a great template that's properly formatted, teaching you what to actually put on the resume. Obviously, I'll help you in this video for free, but if you want more one-on-one support and kind of an expert level course that walks you through everything you need to know, then check it out from the link in the description. And we do have a free introduction course. It's about an hour and a half long. They're just giving you a ton of free value that you can check out before you make a decision on the actual program. Now, going back to content selection and formatting, the biggest problems I often see are that that people just include a lot of irrelevant content or things that really don't help tell the story about them as a candidate. A resume is not just a dumping ground for everything that you've done in your life. You want to be very specific with the type of content you're selecting to put on your resume, and every single thing you put there should have a purpose, and it should demonstrate why someone should bring you in for an interview. A resume is a very quick snapshot of who you are. People will judge it very, very quickly. And if you have even a minor mistake or a weird thing that just doesn't line up with the particular role, immediately they're going to throw your resume away and go look at the next one. People aren't going to read every single word that you have. They're not going to look at every project you've done. They're not going to spend an hour reviewing every individual candidate. What an employer is trying to do is get rid of as many resumes as they possibly can so that they can find the one that they want to bring in for an interview, or find the few that they're going to bring in for an interview. I can tell you, as someone who reviewed hundreds of resumes, you're looking for any little thing you can to eliminate this person so that you can move through the pile as quickly as possible. That's just how it works. That's the reality. You need to make sure everything you have really helps tell your story and encourages someone to keep reading further, which is also where formatting will come in, which I'll talk about in a second. Now, generally speaking, the main things you want to include on a programming resume is obviously going to be education, prior experience, programming project, and skills. Now, you can have some other categories as well, and these will differ depending on what you have to put on your resume, but you can put things like volunteering, if you had a great accomplishment, if you had scholarships in school. These things are good, especially as a junior or entry-level role, and things like a professional summary can work as well, as long as they're not too large or take up such a huge portion of the page. For most people, a one-page resume, especially if you're a junior or entry-level developer, is totally fine. If you do have a lot more to demonstrate and you're maybe more senior in your career, 2 pages can be fine. But the point is, you don't want to throw a bunch of irrelevant content on here. A lot of people say that they were in band in high school, or that they, came second place in track and field. Believe it or not, people are putting this on their professional developer resume, and it just makes it seem like a kid is applying. Makes it seem like this is the resume you're shooting off to work at a summer camp or go work at McDonald's. You just want to make sure that you're coming across as a professional and that everything you have is completely relevant and really is aiding you rather than hurting you. Even things like putting your GPA on a resume, probably not something that I would advise. Even if you have a really high GPA, like 4.0, whatever, it's better if you put something like honors, right? As opposed to listing the GPA, which can make you come across as potentially arrogant. Things like ranking your skills or having way too many skills on your resume can just kind of void the credibility. I made this mistake before, listing 30 different programming skills on my resume. When you do that, it just looks like anything that you've ever even looked at, you threw on your resume, because it's unrealistic that you're actually an expert and qualified in JavaScript, Go, Python, PHP, Ruby, distributed systems, data structures, etc. You don't want to list too many things because it reduces the credibility. Now, there's just so many things that I could list here, and it really is on a case-by-case basis. The point is, be really careful with the content you select. Now, the next point of this is the order in which you place this content. You want to highlight the things that are the best about you on the resume first. So, for example, in my case, I didn't graduate university. I don't have a computer science degree. So that education section, maybe I might list a boot camp, or I might list some self-taught resources that I've used, but it's not going to be the first thing that I want to throw at the very top of my resume. That's because it's not the most impressive thing, and it's not the thing that I want to focus or highlight. Whereas if you graduated Harvard with a computer science degree, that's probably one of the first things you want to put on your resume to really highlight that skill, because that's interesting and that's something that people immediately should see. In my case, one of the first things I'd want to list on my resume is that I worked at Microsoft. This is a big company. It's immediately recognizable. I can put their logo right on the resume, and immediately now people know, oh, okay, this guy is, he's serious. He worked at Microsoft. That's what you want to do in terms of the order of the content that you have. Highlight the most impressive, most interesting things, and as you go down, they become least important or less significant. Now, the last major thing that I noticed in a lot of applications and resumes was just the lack of confidence. Now, it's hard to really explain how this manifests itself, but a lot of times when I was reviewing applications, it just seemed like the person applying wasn't confident in their skills. They weren't confident they were going to be able to complete the job, and they were almost like begging for a role or an opportunity. Now, I know it's a little bit more unique in my situation because I'm kind of more of a role model. People look up to me online, they want to work with me, and I totally get that. But when you're trying to get a job, you want to present yourself as the best candidate possible. Maybe you don't know everything yet, but you should mention that you're confident that you'll be able to figure it out. You know that you can do this. You know that you can learn quickly. You're responsible. You take initiative, whatever, all these character traits that people typically are looking for. That's what you want to demonstrate. And a lot of that comes through the way that you speak and the way that you write things like your professional summary or a cover letter or the way you answer questions in an application. You always just want to make sure you come across as the best possible candidate, and you don't want to do anything to potentially harm yourself. With that in mind, I'm not saying to lie, I'm just saying to potentially omit things that might not make you seem like the best person for the job. Don't start the beginning of your application line with, hey, I'm still a beginner, I'm just getting started, but I would love this job. That's the worst possible thing you can do, because immediately it makes it look like you don't actually know what you're doing. You're not confident that you're going to be good for the job, and you're just looking for a handout. You're looking for someone to help you more than you're going to help them. So I don't want to kind of ramble on this point too much, but the point is, the more confident you come across really in almost any area of life, the better off you're going to be. I hate to say fake it until you make it, but it really is just the reality of the world. Definitely don't lie, don't make things up, but I'm just saying be selective in the information that you share. And even though you might be a beginner or just starting out, you don't probably want to list that as the first thing. You want to mention that you're really eager, you're willing to learn, you take initiative, you learn quickly, blah, blah, blah. Those are just better ways to frame things than to say, hey, I'm just starting out, I'm a junior, and I'm really hoping you can help me. As much as I wish that was the way the world works, it just doesn't, and that's why I'm kind of making this video and sharing with you guys a little bit of tough love. So anyways, guys, that's going to wrap up this video. I hope that you found this helpful, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.